to start the day with hope. I want to start the day with happiness. I want to start the day with song, and I hope you'll sing along. I want to start the day with you. I want to start the day with joy. Deep in the heart of every girl and boy, I want to fill them all with pride and such joy to be alive. I want to start the day with you. You've got to feel it in your soul. The spirit moves you and it takes control. It takes you to the highest high, lifts you up that mountainside. You've got to feel it in your soul. Let's make this world a better place. Tell everybody in the human race. Tell them about it, spread the news. I say, what have we got to lose? We're gonna make the dream come I wanna start this thing today. Let's try to show the world a better way. Make sure that everything you do is as you'd have done unto you, and it'll chase the clouds away. I want to start the day with hope. I want to start the day with happiness. I want to start the day with song, and I hope you'll sing along. I want to start the day with you. I want to end the day with love that's shining down on me from God above. I want to celebrate with song, and I want you to sing along. I want to celebrate your love. I want to celebrate with song, and I want you to sing along. I want to spend the day with you. I want to celebrate your love with all praise to God above. I want to spend the day with you.
All right, well, good morning. And welcome to Unity Church of Overland Park. I'm so glad you chose to join us this Sunday morning, and welcome back, Joe Morrison. Woo! Great to have you back here with us. But I would also like to just say thank you to everybody who attended our listening circle last Sunday. It really was a truly wonderful time for us to all come together and to hear one another. So thank you for taking the time to attend that. And just so you know, our board of directors met last Thursday night, and they've already started looking at everything that they heard and trying to find the common themes in what they heard and to see what we do next. Where do we go from here? So thank you for participating in that. All right, and Reverend Carrie, would you open us in prayer?
I would love to open you in prayer. Open us. Open everybody. Let's open up, shall we? Oh, let's just take a nice deep breath and land right here, right now. This point of creation. It's the only place where we really live fully and completely. For the past is simply a memory, and the future is simply an imagining. So right here, right now, we open our hearts and our minds to that beingness that we are, that great God, in, through, as, and around us. We are so blessed to be here today. And we take in all those who may be dealing with the aftermath of the storm last night, knowing that they too are surrounded in love and light, and that divine order brings perfect order to their lives also. We know that as we open up today, we hear the words that we need to hear from the podium, through the music, through those in our church family who are here to love us and support us also. We are so blessed. And we know that the Spirit of God surrounds this service, surrounds this church, surrounds our world. And so it is. Amen.
And if you would remain standing, please, and join our song leaders in singing "In Beauty May I Walk."
invite you now to just settle into your seats just a little bit more. Relax every cell and fiber of your being as we prepare to go into the silence, that place of our deepest connection with God. We hear the words, I am love. And we can hear those words from the personal I am, or from that great I am of which we are a part. For there is no difference, and yet there is. It's the wonderful paradox of living a human, spirit-led life. So right now we allow ourselves to sink into the I am, all of the I am. Breathing in life, breathing out love. Allowing that I am to breathe us. Realizing that it is right here, right now, that we are loved and supported. That we are always safe and secure as we release our fear and allow ourselves to know the truth of who and what we are and what is truly our life expressed. I invite you now to go even deeper to the edge of that silence. And then perhaps into that silence as we allow for that space now, allowing ourselves to be loved. Taking a deep breath and coming forth from that silence, bringing with you the peace and the joy, knowing that it is in every moment that you can go there, that it is the one constant that is always available, always present. And we are so grateful for this truth, for this time we've had together and the times that we know always that great I am. And so it is. Amen.
Would you please join me in singing the traditional version of the Lord's Prayer? Our Father, Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And leave us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever.
You know, I was thinking, how many of us out here have ever had an opportunity in your life to take a chance, to take a risk, to do something where you just kind of have to step out a little bit farther than maybe you're comfortable with, maybe you're not quite sure you're going to be successful if you do this? How many of you have ever had an opportunity to do something like that? How many of you didn't take that opportunity?
It's too scary.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, yes. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. You and the 9 o'clock, I'm going to have to come up with another 15 minutes of things to talk to you about. Yeah, what is it in every instance? What held you back from taking that chance? What held you back from applying for that job? Or from going up and introducing yourself to what could be your new best friend? It was fear, right? It was fear. You had in some way, shape, or form convinced yourself that something scary might happen. Well, it reminds me of a folk tale that I'd heard a lot before, and I actually just stumbled across as I was getting ready for this Sunday. And this is a folk tale. It's set in Africa. And there are a couple of Cape buffalo that are just roaming, grazing, doing what Cape buffalo do. And the son comes up to his father, and he says, "Dad, is there anything, what should I be afraid of? Is there anything for me to be scared of?" And the dad looks at his son, and he says, "Only lions. My son, only lions are the things for you to fear." And his son said, "Oh yes, lions. I've heard of lions, and I know they are scary and they are dangerous. So if I ever see a lion, I will run. I will run as fast as I can." And the father said, No, don't run. Running is the worst thing you can do, because then the lion is going to chase you. And that lion is faster than you. And he'll catch you and eventually jump onto your unprotected back and bring you down. Don't run. And so the son kind of looks and says, "Well, then what do I do, Dad?" He said, "If you see a lion, stand your ground. Let it know you're not afraid of it. And if that doesn't work, stomp your feet and show it your sharp horns. And if that still doesn't work, just move towards it a little bit. And if it's still there, charge at it and hit it with everything you got. But don't let it know you're afraid." And the same thing is true for all of us. We all have fears that pop up in our life and in our world. But the best thing for us to do is to stand up and confront them, not run from them. See, the best thing for us to do is to take that chance, to step out and take that risk and not run away from it. Otherwise, we wind up like the lion and the buffalo. Because I can tell you, if you run away from your fear, that fear is just going to chase you, and eventually it's going to catch up to you, and it's going to jump on your back, and it's going to drag you down with it. Fear is faster than you are. And so what we do instead is we stand up to that fear. We confront that fear. We spend time with it. We realize where it comes from, and then we can heal it. I thought it was interesting last Sunday at our listening circle. Somebody mentioned how they felt like a lot of times in Unity we have this sort of impulse to be happy and joyful about everything, and that we don't really get into the really hard stuff and how you deal with that. And I thought it was interesting he said that as I was looking through, trying to find, I was like, well, I can find a nice quote from our co-founders, Charles or Myrtle Fillmore, about fear and how you deal with fear. Guess what I couldn't find? They talk about it, but there's not really a here's how you deal with fear. I thought, well, maybe there's something in the Bible I can use, and there is. But instead, our quote today in our lesson on how to deal with fear comes from a very sacred text entitled Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Now, if you have never read a Harry Potter book in your life, if you've not read one single word of one of these, let me just kind of bring you up to speed on what's going on in them and what they're about. See, these books are the story of a young boy who became an orphan, and he was raised by his aunt and uncle. And it's that sort of standard aunt and uncle mistreating their nephew sort of thing. And then one day, Harry finds out that he's a wizard. He finds out that there's this entire other world that he didn't even know existed, and he's a part of it. And not only is he a part of it, he's actually one of the most famous and well-known wizards of his time. So can you imagine what that would be like to all of a sudden discover that you're a part of this thing you didn't know existed, and everybody else knows everything about you because you're so famous, but you don't know the first thing about what's going on? And so he enters into this school for witches and wizards, and he starts to learn about this magical world and the creatures that are in it and how to deal with it. And it's in the third book that he confronts something called a Boggart. My apologies to any children of the 60s that thought I was going to be talking about something different. You've all identified yourself by laughing at that, so anyway. But he encounters something called a Boggart. And this is what a Boggart is. It's a shapeshifter, Hermione said. It can take the shape of whatever it thinks will frighten us most. Well, I couldn't have put it better myself, said Professor Lupin. So the Boggart, sitting in the darkness within, has not yet assumed a form. He doesn't know what will frighten the person on the other side of the door. Nobody knows what a Boggart looks like when he is alone, but when I let him out, he will immediately become whatever each one of us most fears. So you have this creature that's ready to become whatever that is for you. And of course, they're teaching them how to deal with this terrifying fear that shows up in front of your face. And the solution isn't lock the door and run or try and get away from it. This is how they deal with it. The charm that repels a Boggart is simple, yet it requires force of mind. You see, the thing that really finishes a Boggart is laughter. What you need to do to force it to assume a shape that you find amusing. And even the magic word they speak for this is ridiculous. So they take that thing that is so terrifying to them, and then they imagine it in some sort of an amusing state. A mummy getting tripped up on its bandages, or a spider wearing roller skates. Ways to take that fear and to make it silly. And we can do the exact same thing. You see, fear shows up in many different ways in our lives. I have fears that I would absolutely consider ridiculous fears. Now, these are the sort of things like several years ago when Sarah, my wife, and I, before we had our kids, she would get off work around 6 o'clock at night. Well, there would occasionally be a time she'd get caught at work, and so now it's 6:30 or 6:45, and she was supposed to be home a while back, but she's not yet. And have any of you started telling stories to yourself when somebody's supposed to be there and they're not there yet? How do those stories start progressing? Not good, right? And you start telling worse and worse stories about what's going on, and before you know it, you are absolutely terrified, right, of everything that could have happened. Well, in Unity, we have a principle that explains exactly why this works. It's our third basic Unity principle. It's the idea that our thoughts create the reality that we perceive. And so if we're thinking thoughts of fear, then those thoughts breed more fear and more fear and more fear until we're terrified. The way we can stop that is through exactly what they learn in the Harry Potter books. It's through realizing that this fear is ridiculous. This is silly. I have no reason to be afraid. Everything is fine. So that's just one way to deal with them. But here's the thing about fear. That little surface fear, that fear that I haven't heard from my wife yet and she's supposed to be home, that's just a trigger. There is a much deeper fear below that. There's something else going on that's bringing up that feeling of fear within you to begin with. And so, yes, you can take that momentary fear and just kind of shift it to remind yourself that this isn't really going on. Because the truth about fear is just like my shirt says, fear isn't real. Fear isn't anything that's in the present and now. The fear is the story that you're telling yourself about what you think might happen. And so when we shift that, we're able to get away from that momentary fear. But as I learned in school and seminary, fear can go deeper than just those sort of surfacey, my wife isn't home yet and she should be fears. When we were in school, there's a class that they have us take. It's called Pastoral Counseling 2. And Carrie is all excited about this class. Like, hey, pastoral counseling. And here's the thing about that class. That's the class where they actually teach us how to do counseling with congregants. We actually practice. And I always felt like they taught us just enough counseling theory to be dangerous, but maybe not quite helpful. And so I would walk into that class because they put you in a small group and then you spent 10 weeks. It would be like Connie and Annette and I are going to go sit downstairs in a room and then I'll be the counselor and Connie will share with me and Annette will criticize us and say what I did well. And so as I was doing this, fear would come up for me before I'd go into this class, especially if I had to be a counselor. And I always kind of just assumed it's like, oh, it's the fear of maybe I'll just really mess up somebody and I won't get it right. But what I did, and this is what I would encourage all of you to do if you have fears, is I sat with it. I didn't run from it. I didn't hide from it. I just sat with it. And I started asking myself, why? What is this fear about? And what I realized is that the fear wasn't that I would mess up in the counseling session. My fear was that I was going to realize I wasn't good enough at this to be a minister. My fear was that I was going to realize that I was in some way inadequate for what I felt like I'd been called to do. And what happens if I'm not good enough to be a minister? Now, see, that's a much bigger deal than just, I'm afraid I would say something wrong to Connie and just really mess with her mind for a little bit. That's a personal thing, and that's something we can deal with. And when you get to that level, it's hard. It is so hard to deal with those fears alone. But once again, Harry Potter has the answer. And seriously, if you have not read one of these books, I would really, really encourage you to do it. Not only is it a wonderful story, but as Harry's growing up, he learns all these little lessons that, oddly enough, apply to our lives. And so they're talking about how to best deal with these boggarts when you find them. And they say, why would it be best to go in a group? If you knew there was a boggart to deal with, why would you want to go in a group? And the answer one of the students gives is, well, because there are so many of us, it won't know what shape it should be. Precisely, said Professor Lupin. It's always best to have company when you're dealing with a boggart. He becomes confused. What should he become? A mummy? A flesh-eating slug? I once saw a boggart make that very mistake. Tried to frighten two people at once and turned himself into half a slug. Not remotely frightening. We are your community right here. You do not have to deal with these fears alone. We're here to support you. Unity Church of Overland Park is here to provide you with opportunities to help move through and heal these fears. One of the simplest things you can do is just fill out one of these green prayer support forms. They're right in the pews in front of you. You could have this done before I even say God bless you at the end of the service. And then you take this little form out and you put it, there's a glass box by the bookstore, and you put it there. But here's what happens to this form when you're done with it. Reverend Carrie will collect them, and she's going to pray over each prayer request that's in there. And then one of our prayer chaplains is going to take these, and they're going to pray over it. And then they take every name, your first name only, and they put it on a list, and they send it out to a team of people in this church, and that team holds your prayer in their prayer time every day for 2 weeks. And then after that, we're still not done. After that, these prayer requests go out to Silent Unity. And out at Silent Unity, they're held in their prayer vigil 24 hours a day for 30 days. All of that prayer support just by filling this out. But there's even more ways for you to get that support. Maybe you really need that one-on-one connection. Well, we have a prayer chaplain team. Would our prayer chaplains stand up? All of you, whether you're on duty after the service or not. If you're a prayer chaplain, just stand. Yeah, we can clap for the prayer chaplains. Thank you. These people are available after every service to listen deeply to what it is that might be going on for you, to speak with you from their heart, and to pray with you. So if you find yourself in a need for getting through fear and you're not sure how to do it, take the opportunity to find one of these prayer chaplains and pray with them. It is an awesome experience. And of course, there's also Reverend Carrie and myself. It's our absolute honor to meet with you, to talk with you, to pray with you. I understand there's business that goes on here during the church, during the week. We have meetings to attend. We have things that are going on. But what I want each and every one of you to know is that none of those things are more important than the opportunities that we have to be ministers. Please do not ever think, oh, I don't want to come bother them with that, or they're busy during the week. It's our joy to talk with you, to pray with you, to support you. So certainly feel free to reach out to us. Because as we move through this idea of confronting your fear and standing up to it, it's your community that is there to help support you. And that's exactly what that buffalo found out at the beginning of our service. You see, he heard what his dad said. And immediately the first thought that came to him was, well, I don't know if I could charge at a lion. I'm afraid. What if it attacks me back? And his dad could see the doubt in the buffalo's eyes. And so he said, my son, look around you. And as the son looked, he noticed that there were about 200 members of his herd standing there right with him, each one with big, broad shoulders and sharp horns. And the dad said, you know what? If you run from your fear, we can't help you. But if you stand up to it, if you charge at it, each and every one of us is right here with you, charging right behind you, ready to support you and to help you. And in that moment, the son got it. He got that together they were strong enough to stand up to anything that worried them. We all have lions in our world. In the book of Deuteronomy, it tells us to be strong and bold. Have no fear or dread of them, because it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not fail you or forsake you. That's Deuteronomy 31:8. Stand up to your fears. Stand up to those things that are challenging you. Know that you don't have to run from them. You have the presence of God within you. You have this community to support you as you attack those things that frighten you. And as you do, know that every single one of us is standing behind you, cheering, encouraging you on, charging right there with you. And so for whatever it is that might be holding you back, know that we're right there with you as you stand up to confront it. God bless you all.